Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to A Font of Type, poem number 7 of the 58 of Sands at 70. Here we will have a celebration by a great writer of the world of printing. I mean, think about our 5 P's of Whitman, and we didn't mention Whitman as printer, and we certainly should have and could have, no question about it. I'm always intrigued when people ask me, okay, all right, after you get past So Long, that great poem that we worked with, what else is there left, I mean, that he could possibly write about? Well, obviously one of them is the infirmity and the growing old and all of those challenges. But one of the really interesting things in the next 2 poems is that he's going to talk about writing, which is fascinating. By the end of his life, he's ready to qualify some of the stuff he has to say about writing. Do you remember in Song of Exposition number 5, how he says, watch how the printer sets type? Whitman did a lot of this. He spent a lot of time in print shops, and we're going to get some of that here. I love that. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist. Everything from inscriptions, we just mentioned Song of Exposition. I've given a set of introductory comments to Intro to Sands at 70 that I'm hopeful that you've read, and then we've just finished with Bravest Soldiers. Now, our Nortons will tell us that John Russell Young's Men and Memories, New York 1901, contains a slightly different version of this poem, which, says the editor, was sent to Mr. Young marked personal, don't print. First published in this group in November Boughs, 1888. Also, in line 3, when we get that long primer line, the names here will all be types in the sizes from 6 to 10 points, then most in use. So I'm gonna find this an interesting poem for a number of reasons, not least of which it's about history in some ways. Now, just to point out, a font of type, font gets used one time only in Leaves of Grass, and it's right here. I find that remarkable. And we've already mentioned with type the Song of Exposition 5, also the preceding songs and farewell, now preceding songs and farewell, as well play this game of the word type. It's kind of interesting the way it plays out. Now, let's just enjoy the language as he writes about writing. This latent mind, these unlaunched voices, passionate powers, wrath, argument or praise, or comic leer, or prayer devout, nonpareil, brevier, bourgeoisie, long primer merely. These ocean waves, arousable to fury and to death, or soothed to ease and shiny sun and sleep, within the pallid slivers slumbering. I love, and you hear it, right? I love the way that he writes about writing, and he writes about typesetting, and he writes about fonts, but he also is highly sensitive and conscious of the way the poem needs to sound. I love this about Whitman. Notice we'll begin with the word latent, which will take us back to the old cause. This latent mind. In other words, it's as if there's this mind that's just waiting to be found, right? But the use of the word mind can also mean my own. These unlaunched voices, by the way, I love this. Here we are. There was just a few poems left in all of Leaves of Grass, and he's still using language that has not yet been used. Unlaunched is used one time in Leaves of Grass, and it's right here. Of course, voices takes us all the way back. I mean, we've had the poem voices. We're familiar with his use of that. And then notice his use of the dash twice in this first line. Passion and powers in the repetition of the sound P. Of course, what's he saying? Well, the words are just laying there on the page, and yet they have the potentiality to be so powerful. Then he uses the word wrath, which takes us back to Song of the Exposition 2, Achilles' wrath, you'll remember. Wrath, argument or praise, or comic leer. You'll remember this word leer from the poem Broadway when we get to it later. Or prayer devout. In other words, obviously there's a whole lot of religious texts that have been typeset. And then he's going to list all of these different types of font. And this is fascinating because lots of readers of even Whitman's day wouldn't understand necessarily what he was talking about. Nonpareil, brevier, bourgeoisie, long primer, and he uses the word merely. In other words, it's just types of font, right? But then he'll characterize the lines of type as ocean waves, arousable to fury. By the way, the only use of the word arousable in Leaves of Grass is right here. Arousable to fury and to death. We're familiar with this, obviously, in Leaves of Grass, especially drum taps. Or soothed to ease and shiny sun. You'll remember shiny from thou orb aloft. Sun and sleep. Within the palate, palate used 8 times in Leaves of Grass. He loves this word. Slivers slumbering. Go back to Song of Myself 21 for his use of the word slumbering. Here, of course, the S sounds as slivers and slumbering will play together. Well, I love this poem because it is, in fact, fun to listen to writers write about writing. And what is it that we're going to say at 2A? Well, great writers love every part of writing, including, and especially, we might say for Whitman, the typesetting, the print shop. He loved the print shop. He loved all of the action and the energy of the print shop. And of course, he saw it as so vital to what was happening in the growth of American democracy. And I love the special language of printing. And he doesn't say anything about it, he just kind of throws it out there. At 3A, and I hope this works for you guys as well at 3A, reflect back on what Ben Franklin said about printing. I hear Ben Franklin, there's an interesting connection between Franklin and Whitman, quite frankly. They both are great lovers of printing and the power of the press and the power of words. Go back and look at what we've said in earlier lectures at learnstorm.net about Ben Franklin and his passion for printing in his autobiography. Finally, at 3B, what do you love most about words and about type and font and word setting? I mean, when you, for example, are putting together your projects, if you could have your own font, what would it be? There's an interesting question. What would be your font? And of course, we'll ask always about Whitman, what is his favorite font? Well, I think it's the one he's using at the time, don't you? Thank you.